Okay, good afternoon. I am Anto Budiarjo. Welcome to Monday Live. This is something that we do every Monday afternoon at 3 p.m. Eastern. Try and figure out what the future is for smarter buildings and related conversations, let's put it that way. We are listed on mondaylive.org, just in case you wonder who we are. Also, just to point out that the views expressed here are personal, not of any company or organization. Please do post questions and comments and chats and anything else on the Zoom chat. We want to make this, especially this month, we want to make it as interactive as possible. And any information that's on the slide deck will be on mondaylive.org on the homepage, all the way at the bottom. And happy President's Day to everybody in the US. I guess happy President's Day to people outside of the US as well. they wish to recognize that. Our focus for February is post-summit discussions, where we had a really sort of interesting summit, interesting Sunday before AHR. So we want to continue that. Our agenda today, normal sort of news and chit chat, and then we want to talk about moving forward together, how we can actually start to get broader sort of activities and action in this industry. But before that, hand it over to Ken. What's going on, Ken?
I'm not allowed to swear?
No.
No, okay. Just a few words then. Okay, it's been a busy month for us. AHR was a tremendous success. We basically reached out to over 30 folks in our sessions, and basically touched a lot of folks and had a lot of creative community collisions. I've just submitted an article to Connected Contractor, and I came up with this title: Creative Community Collisions, our takeaway from AHR Expo. When I kind of look back, the big picture of what was going on there is we had a whole bunch of groups that hadn't really all talking, and I think that was a great success. So then I actually decided to ask ChatGPT, what is creative community collision? Thinking I'd invented this word, and lo and behold, I hadn't invented the word. As with everything, ChatGPT knew all about it. So there's a definition it came back with, but I think that's a good definition, and it's a lot of what Monday Alive is doing. Monday Alive did with the summit, and what we did in our sessions. It's really just bringing all of these communities together, and they don't necessarily have to agree, but it is good that they hear each other. And I'm seeing what's coming out of that is a reassembly of a different kind of mosaic of how we work in the industry. And it's exciting times for sure. So kudos to everybody who's fueling this process. Back to you, Anto.
Thank you, Ken. Collision, that sounds fun. Not in the car sense of ways, but Scott, you have a couple of things today.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. So I wanted to throw this up because even though this is an older article from 2021, I belong to a group called Dads of Castle Rock here in Castle Rock, Colorado. And there's a gentleman. I apologize for the background noise, guys. I've got construction going on in my house right now, so my apologies. Anyway, he's putting a group together to go out and look at converting office buildings into residential condos or apartments. And so just wanted to throw that out there, get some people's feedback, throw your comments in the chat. Are you seeing this taking place in your particular market? I'm not seeing a whole lot of it in Denver, but it seems like there's some traction all of a sudden. So just curious. Next article, Anto. On the footsteps of Mr. Ken Sinclair, As we all know, ChatGPT is taking our world and several others' worlds by storm. I have a good friend that started up a software company about 6 years ago, and he's already converted his chat bot into ChatGPT answering those chatbot inquiries. And he's been using it to write Python code for his software platform. And according to him, it's been scary, accurate, and super easy to use. I'm not a developer, I'm not a software coder kind of guy, but just again, curious, throw your comments in the chat if this is something that you've started to explore, or it's something that you're utilizing to write code, especially if you're doing line code, installing any BAS systems. Just curious. So
Just
thank
Scott,
you, man.
just to build
Yes.
on that, Scott, for a second, there's a great YouTube on this about a guy who actually uses ChatGPT to write code, write an application, fairly sophisticated app for different platforms. The really compelling piece is that it's not a one-time exercise, that as you write the application and you see errors or you see how you want to improve it, you can actually feed back the improvements into ChatGPT as an ongoing conversation, and it improves the code interactively. It's phenomenally good.
I'd like to chime in too,
Agreed.
is chirp in, I guess is the word. We've just got an article that just came in hours ago. It's called The Cost of Change, and it's written by Sudha, and Sudha's our contributing editor that's been he's just written a book on AI GPT, and she's got this article called The Cost of Change, and there's a couple of things in it that caught my attention. The first is that ChatGPT created quite a wave with over 100 million people downloading it and asking it a question. 100 million. That's a lot of folks. And that 100 million was the greatest user growth in the record of the internet. And she actually now talks about the article, the post talks about the cost of chat. And of course, chat costs more than just a search, and the speed and resources required. And she also talks a bit about how this may be an advantage to the smaller companies because of the infrastructure change for some of the larger companies. Very interesting article. It's not even quite done yet. There's still some massaging. I haven't put it on social media yet, but it is on the site. It's called The Cost of Change. Interesting article. Apparently costs about a nickel to do a Google search, and it costs about 30 cents to do a chat if you do that. So interesting. I think it may favor exactly the way you're using it. People just using it rather than the larger companies kind of controlling it. I guess that has a bit of a dichotomy in the fact that Microsoft has bought it. But
that's funny.
Detail.
I'm finding a use at home. My wife uses it for me for my honey-do list. And it's time to take out the trash, Mark, or whatever it is. So, got lots of uses.
Does it actually do the honey-do list?
I'm just pulling your leg. I have no idea.
What happens if you don't do the do list?
Oh, you're in
What does it say?
Yeah.
We were testing it a little bit more this week, and it's interesting. You can ask it to do things like create a procedure for X. And just to show the diversity, I said, create a procedure for adding products to WooCommerce. And it wrote one out, very long, detailed one. I asked, create a process for charging a Tesla, wrote out instructions on how to do that were very accurate. I said, create a process for cooking macaroni, and it wrote out a process for doing that as well. So it's just phenomenal how close it does get to things. And I can imagine with everybody pinging and asking all these things, it is getting smarter that much faster, right?
Yeah.
100 million
people.
users. Yeah. Crazy,
Cool.
crazy.
Okay, so moving on, I had a couple of things. One of you may have seen this project that's being proposed in Saudi. It's called, I've forgotten what it's called now. It's not on this slide, but it's basically a huge big building, the height of the Empire State, but it's also the width of the Empire State in both directions. So it's basically an Empire State size building and as a cube.
It's a 400-meter cube.
There you go, which is
That's
kind of phenomenal.
Yeah.
There seems to be quite a number of these from the Middle East, mostly from Saudi in the last few months. And that in sort of contrast with this other story from someone on TikTok talking about greenwashing in Singapore. What's sort of interesting is that the rationale for the claim that this is greenwashing is that there's this building that's being built. Anna, you may know about this building. It's in Singapore. You know Singapore a lot. And the issue is that there was actually a building already there, and they demolished it to build this one. And the whole greenwashing thing is there's a movement that basically says don't demolish buildings because reusing them is actually a lot better from an environmental perspective, from resources perspective. So that was kind of the key point of this article, and I thought this sort of fitted in with some of the discussions we're having about reuse of facilities. And
it's actually, yeah, it's a big discussion going on in Singapore at the moment, exactly to her point. In fact, I can't say who, but another large tech company's head office in Singapore that we're doing some work with is also looking at demolishing existing and rebuilding to become quote unquote green. And everyone's doing the hang on, if you do the carbon count of that whole exercise, it's a 50-year cycle. How can you make that equate, right? There's a lot of detail behind it. It's I think she's being a little bit superficial in the discussion. There's a lot that goes behind, how much, if you don't demolish, how much do you have to include or upgrade or improve what's already there? And so a really simple example is you see those green gardens that they've got in all the different levels. That's actually really common in Singapore. They will have multiple gardens all the way up and down. And one building's actually clad in green all the way up and down. And then they say, well, to do that to an existing building, it's a complex subject. It's valid for discussion, but it's complex.
What does Chat GPT say? That's where we ask all our complex questions now.
Yeah, and hoping they it gets it right. Is ChatGPT yeah, anyway, moving on. Mark, I think you had
Yeah, I had just a couple. Is one of the things that kind of caught me by surprise, I think it was last week, but yet not a surprise, is that some of the developers and the REITs you're starting to see defaults on some of their properties. For example, I won't mention any names, one in LA in particular, or buildings that they own. They defaulted on 2 LA office towers to the tune of roughly $780 million. And I saw similar happening in New York City. So it's kind of interesting. The times are beginning to catch up with everybody, and hopefully, we are. This will be a limited thing. The other thing I just want to mention, kind of a self plug, Haystack Connect is happening June 5th through the 7th in Nashville. Lots of good stuff that we're preparing for. Not only about Haystack, but data in general. So if you've got an interest, go to haystackconnect.org, and love to have you there. So that's it.
Thank you, Mark. Anybody else have any thoughts or news that they want to share before we move on?
No, I just saw a couple of articles of companies going down to the office only being open 4 days a week. I think in London there's a couple, JP Morgan and a couple others that are actually saying, hey, we're going to be closing the office on Friday, so you're working from home on Fridays, which is a little bit what we talked about before with the office being empty, potentially 4 days a week, but certainly Fridays. So interesting move by one or two of the bigger guys actually saying, no, we're shutting on Friday, the office.
Long weekend for all, or is it? They have
Well,
to
they
work at home?
were meant to be working at home on Friday, but at home as opposed to in the office, because most of them were staying home anyway.
Right.
You know what's interesting? The old saying, "What goes around comes around." When I worked in New York, all the ad agencies on Friday in the summertime did that. They closed on Friday or worked from home, and unless you had to be in there for some reason. So it's kind of interesting. What goes around comes around.
Yeah.
Good. Okay, so the Smarter Summit obviously happened a couple of weeks back, and there is a recording of it, which is the live stream recording. We're actually working on another video that's being produced right now, so that'll take another probably a couple of weeks at least. And just as comment that we are planning to do this again at the next AHR, which is in Chicago at the end of January. So we'll wait a bit before we start planning on that, but not too long, hopefully. So moving forward together, so we want to dedicate the rest of the show on this discussion, and we specifically want to invite people in the audience to come and join us, especially those who were at the Smarter Summit, to chime in on sort of recollections of it, but also more importantly, sort of things that they have decided or think that they can do in terms of moving this industry forward. So please do chime in. I know that I've been chatting with Audrey, who I see in the audience. I'll bring her in, assuming she's okay with that in a minute. But just as a reminder, I did share these two slides last week. These are kind of the way I'm thinking about it is our collective assets, right? So we have the 5+ pillars of action that we talked about in the summit: interoperability, analytics, specification, procurement, and workforce. And then there's a sort of cross-cutting things. That's kind of an organizing set of principles of how we're thinking about the problems right now. We have Monday Live, which is obviously this show, which is a communication media for us to gather once a week and talk about what's going on. The coalition, and Rick Justice, he will be on today. He said he was going to be late, as well as Monika Davis. So the coalition is a legal entity that we can organize things like activities or committees or whatever. And by the looks of the summit and what we got out of the summit, a growing number of people, a community of passionate people about this very subject. So we really want to sort of leverage these assets that we have. The sort of things that we're talking about could be varied. Obviously, the DIP 2525 project is a bit of a model of how we've done things. We can talk about physical events, such as what we did in Summit. We're exploring those in other venues, thinking about using social media beyond LinkedIn, which is our main tool for Monday Live. Outreach to different channels, influencing building owners, influencing vendor strategies, doing things like lunch and learns or sort of other sort of learning kits and tools. Doing podcasts and webinars. I think Monika is starting to plan those, and we'll hear from that a bit. And anything else you can think of, as long as we stay focused on what the mission here is to improve buildings. So just putting that up as a list of things to think about. Audrey said yes, he gave a thumbs up, so I'm going to bring Audrey on as a panelist here. Did I do that right? There you go. Audrey, welcome to Monday Live. Really good to see you here. Appreciated you being at the summit in Atlanta and your contribution during the summit itself and the call to action. Would love to hear your thoughts about what happened in the summit, but also what all of this conversation has motivated you to move forward. But over to you.
Yeah, sure. I mean, so I did attend the Smarter Summit, as Anta just said, on the Sunday before the conference started, and I was most excited about the conversation about workforce that Melissa Boutwell was really leading that part of the conversation. And we were talking all about how to get the younger generation into smart buildings. But what was interesting is that throughout the rest of the conference, I attended other sessions, and I think every single one of them always came back to this workforce question, whether we were talking about cybersecurity or whatever. It all came back to this topic of workforce and how do we get more people, because we're losing the specialties, the talent as more people are retiring. But the interesting thing I noticed that was maybe irking me a little bit in all of these conversations, we're talking about how we need more people, but I never heard any conversation about diversity within our workforce, which I don't know, maybe people are annoyed. I'm going to bring up diversity. I feel like I always do this. But it's just something we can't ignore if we're talking about who is comprising the workforce. It prompted me to look into different statistics about who is Gen Z and what do they want. And Gen Z in the US is increasingly multi-ethnic. And for those who have a college education, majority women these days are getting a college education. And another piece is Gen Z is also increasingly queer, increasingly LGBTQ plus identifying. So it made me realize that if we as an industry aren't specifically trying to appeal to these groups that have historically been left out, then we are making our talent pool smaller and smaller that we can pull from. So that's been what's been on my mind a lot lately, because I've been hearing things about we can have apprentice programs, we can do, go to high schools and whatnot, but if we're not also looking at how do we make our workplaces safer, more inclusive, et cetera. And then also the marketing piece of it, telling people that we want them, specifically from this month of diversity and inclusion, then they're going to go elsewhere. So that's my spiel.
I do really like the perspective, right? You're artificially limiting your pool. If the numbers, if your
Right.
percentages are low to begin with, why are you applying your percentages to a small pool to begin with? I mean,
Yeah.
one way to deal with that is increase the pool, right? And that's, I'm not saying simply, but that's an easy step, right? I mean, you could do it. There are significant, there's a greater audience that we could address to,
Yeah.
and you just do some positive actions to get that going, without having to wait and train and all that sort of other stuff. That's already there.
Yeah, and just some personal experience I'll add to this is that I'm actually quite new to building automation, but my background is in electrical manufacturing, power systems. So, very similar kind of world, working with contractors, going to construction sites, et cetera. And I would say every woman that I know in electrical manufacturing who's in the front end, sales or going to construction sites, every single one of us has some horror story of being harassed. So until that's addressed, why would we want to go work in this industry? It shouldn't be stick it out because it'll be good. That's kind of what I'm thinking about lately.
I'm wondering how we can help with this, how we can, obviously Monday Live is a conversation place, right? And we talk about all sorts of things, and I very much welcome you bringing this up on Monday Live. But how do we proceed with this? How do we make it more inclusive, more open to all different perspectives?
you know,
'Cause I'm-
inviting them to the table, I think, is the first step. That question you just asked was exactly what was said at, if you went to the session that was, I think it was the state of the HVAC/R industry.
Mhm.
And it was one of the questions is, okay, we don't, I think Farouk said that the building automation industry is 97% men and 3% women. So how do we get more women interested? And they didn't have time for questions, as you've learned from my participation in the Smart Summit. I love to raise my hand and ask a question or a comment. And what I wanted to say to the panelists and to the audience members, most of whom are men, were there are a ton of different women in HVAC, women in ASHRAE events happening at ASHRAE conference. Are any of you going? Are any of you going to learn and to meet people, or is it just an expectation that this is the session for the women to go and talk to each other? You know, I mean, I think that's the first step, is going out there.
I would say, just personally, I always, when I saw those, assumed that was for women only, to be honest.
No. You got to come.
That's interesting.
That's the point, I think.
Yeah,
Yeah, it is. Because, you know, 3% women, we're on our own, we're not going to grow and change the industry. You know, we need everyone.
I never even thought about it that way. I just assumed that was a chance for women to get together to compare stories and successes and what's working and not working and so forth. So didn't ever think of being invited to something like that. So problem number one.
So,
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
so Audrey, Mark Peacock. So let me ask you this.
Mhm.
What brought you to the industry? Okay.
Mhm. What brought me to the industry? I'll backtrack a little bit. I mean, what first brought me into electrical engineering was wanting to help solve the climate crisis. And I felt like the best way to do that is related to energy. And I come from Houston, where it's all oil and gas. And I was very anti that, even though my dad is Schlumberger. So that's kind of what brought me into the energy space. And then after I graduated, I went to ABB, because for me, the more interesting problem, well, I was studying electrical engineering with a focus on renewables. But then I thought the more interesting problem is not how do solar panels work or wind turbines work, but technology kind of sorted. How does it integrate with the rest of our existing infrastructure? That's very challenging, especially on the power grid. So that's how I got into the power grid business at ABB. And then there was an opportunity to move into buildings, which for me is an interesting space of not only energy technologies, but it's a place where it actually collides with human beings and how we experience the built environment and how we're feeling and everything like that. So yeah, what brought me here is an interest in the technology, but I think more of that core drive of climate sustainability, which I think is across all of Gen Z is very similar. And, you know, appealing to the ability to be part of that.
No,
That's a really good perspective, right? That we haven't really, we make a lot of fuss about our technology being sustainability is one of the big initiatives. And even though it's, you know, it has an impact, we haven't done a really good job of explaining, and I go right across the community, you know, whether it's age or sex or whatever your spectrum, especially in the young generation, that it is an area that you can make an impact on sustainability. So, I mean, and one of our challenges, to be honest, guys, one of our challenges I keep running into is innovation in that space, right? We keep rehashing the same old crap. And part of that is because you look at this crew here, no offense to all of us, we're a bunch of old guys who keep coming up with the same ideas. And I know that in my team, it's always the new folks that are bringing to the equation who come up with the innovative thoughts.
Yeah.
Actually, Audrey, I would like to point out that Automated Buildings for the last 3 years for March has dedicated the issue to Women's International Day. And again, I was reaching out to our contributing editors, and I've got commitments from them to pull something together for March. I just took a look at my status with you, and I'm still pending. You have not
sorry.
decided to accept me as an acceptable person I understand that happens a lot.
I like to meet people. I've met you, Ken. I'll accept your LinkedIn. Okay, accept it, accept it.
And if you do, I would love to share your thoughts in an article. Either you
Okay.
write it or I write it, or I'll post it, whatever you want. Just,
Sure.
but that's
Good.
the message has to get out. You're absolutely right. And that came up in a lot of things diversity is just, it was almost in every one of our sessions, the word came up. And I know in the consulting company that SES, which is the original consulting company that Automated Buildings was born out of, all of their last 5 hires have been, what should I say? Not traditional white folks, let's put it that way. It was basically all from other countries, actually. They're one of the greatest assets we have is the turmoil in the world, and we actually have a fairly nice place to work. So a lot of these youth are actually looking to come to either America or Canada to have a better lifestyle. And we're in a very fortunate place in the world that we can actually draw these people. I'm not supposed to use these people, but the talent of the world to come and help us out, and they're interested. So all we need to do is tell a compelling story.
So
I guess also, Audrey, is that you're following your path through what you've done with some of the bigger companies. It's not trying, a building's more manageable. You can go in and actually make a change and an effect in a building because it's a smaller kind of thing, rather than trying to solve the whole industry from an energy supplier basis.
Yeah.
And we're all in the world of being able to actually do that, and picking out a building and making a change with it. People do actually look now and actually say, hey, the lights on in that building, and so things can be changed at that sort of level, as opposed to, as I said earlier, the whole industry trying to change that to make a difference.
Well, and it's very local, right, Roger? I mean, you could do it in your own city, in your own backyard, with your own, it's immediate.
And I think the industry as a whole obviously is extremely open to this and trying, yet hasn't been as successful as one would hope, but it's a beginning. And I think what's adding to this in a very positive way is the ESG movement, because if you get away from the environmental side of this and you start talking about the social side and possibly a little bit on the governance side, diversity and equality and equity and all that, et cetera, is part of the initiative if you're truly adopting the whole ESG group of principles. So I think that's a good motivator for many especially larger organizations who have publicly said that they are addressing, accepting, and doing ESG initiatives within their organizations. So let me ask you this too, is this, so if Monday Live, and I'll just use us as an example, got together a group of, we'll just call women, and again, ethnicity doesn't matter, just say women, and we won't go any further than that. You, as a good person who has really put her heart and soul into doing this for reasons, what would you tell them? Why would you, in other words, using you as our spokesperson, come join me, come join Audrey, because of what? Or why, sorry.
I'm going to be a little bit of a product marketing manager here, but I think it's first is voice of customer. What do they want in an industry? If it's the sustainability piece, then it's talking about exactly how it links to people. If it's, another thing you can think of that I never hear people talking about really is how the way that we manage a building can improve accessibility for people with disabilities. If that's what's interesting to people, that can be one aspect to it. Yeah, I mean, that's a place where I really like to hit home is that this work matters, and it's part of our entire infrastructure. I don't think people. In college, I had no idea that building automation was a direction to go in. So I think just getting the story out there of what is valuable here and what we're doing is the first place.
So what's sort of interesting to me is that point that you made earlier, Audrey, is that sustainability and related subjects was the reason, was a key reason for you to be here in this industry. And when I reflect on the typical conversations of the industry that's occurred on Monday Live and other things over the past 2-3 years, sustainability is just an item on a list of potential value proposition, and how do we figure that out, right? So that's completely, obviously, sort of different, right? Completely opposite way of actually thinking about it, and I love that.
It's the thing for me. It's the thing. I mean, it's something I've always said is if I feel like I'm veering away from this driver of working in sustainability, if I'm not really doing that anymore, it's time to make a change and come back to this. I think that's what a lot of people, younger people in Gen Z are like. Couldn't say for sure, but I think that it's a trend of that people are thinking about their careers in this way of, is what I'm doing, does it matter?
Audrey, I'd like to shift it a little different direction.
Sure.
Are we on the wrong channel? Typically, everybody on this screen sort of supports LinkedIn, and I'm kind of guessing that possibly you and the youth coming into the industry are on a different channel, and I'm trying to figure that out. Could you provide a little insight into that? Where do you think these diverse people, where are they normally communicating? If I wanted to reach out and talk to them, where do I go to do that? Could you?
Sure. I mean, if you're my friend on LinkedIn, you saw I just made a TikTok. I'm starting to do TikToks now. I mean, that's the big platform, right? Especially if the goal is to reach younger people. If you're trying to reach your customers today, you're probably not on there. But if it's about recruitment and getting people more interested, probably TikTok.
So we're all talking on the wrong channel. And the fact that I use the word channel is even dates it worse.
Yeah, that's television days.
That's right.
So Monika, Monika, you've joined us here, and I know that you've been thinking about this a lot, about communications and channels, as it were. You want to chime in on that?
Channel is not the worst word to use. When it comes to TikTok, what we're doing here, this collaborative conversation, I mean, you could go live on TikTok, but really, I don't think LinkedIn is a bad place to be. I just think that maybe we should promote more so on TikTok that we're on LinkedIn. If you want to join the conversation, then come join the conversation over there. Do you agree, Audrey?
Oh, no, don't put this on TikTok.
Okay.
Don't put this on TikTok.
You don't think
this is
so?
the wrong
Okay.
format.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
I just meant like this particular kind of panel. You can do other kinds of education, or
yes.
I meant generally getting people interested in smart buildings, understanding what
Yes.
it means. There's like short form videos that work really well,
Okay.
but trying
Not
to put this
putting
panel on a live.
No. That's what I was saying. I think it would be
Yeah.
great to get some of our information out there on TikTok in a fun, exciting, entertaining way, but then to also promote that we are having this conversation over here on this side. I think that would probably be the best.
Yeah,
step. I think LinkedIn is a bad choice.
For those who have not seen it, Audrey did a TikTok of her experiences at AHR, which I thought was really fun. You need to dig that up and watch that, because for me, it sort of gave a completely different view of what AHR was all about.
Can you post that link or not?
Sure.
If somebody could post it, that'd be great. Thank you.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you.
Or
Well, I
join
think this
TikTok
is a
and then
great-
you can watch it on TikTok.
Yeah, that means
Well-
we'd have to get TikTok, all of us, right?
Mm.
So,
Can I
Um,
make a
oh, go ahead. I was
Can I make
gonna,
a comment?
Oh,
I
so
believe
sad,
David
Marky.
put in the chat. I do remember the conversation last week. Sorry, my dog's going crazy. About how TikTok and Instagram wouldn't be appropriate. I believe it was Mark that brought up the conversation of the expense of media in that type of way. And I don't, so many thoughts about that. I don't think it's an inappropriate place to be. I just think that you have to do it the right way. I think it would be a bit more, well, I don't think so, because Audrey's TikTok was really interesting and exactly what is on TikTok for those type of things. So I don't think it would be non-appropriate. I just think it would be trial and error in the beginning for sure.
I think this goes to the point why channel is the wrong word, because channel,
Platform is
It's
probably
really-
better.
yeah, channel is really kind of a ABC or NBC or CBS. That's kind of the way we think about channel, especially
Yeah.
The generation of past. That's not how you look at these different platforms, because they actually do different things. They do the format's different, and the audience and the type of engagement is different. So that's to be kept in mind.
I'm starting to feel like we're crossing a couple really important topics here. One is the link that Audrey mentioned between, or the reason she mentioned for wanting to be in this industry, right? Which she then tied to Gen Z population in general, which also extended to the fact that LGBTQ community is growing in Gen Z. So one challenge is get the message that caused Audrey to get interested out to Gen Z. Issue number two is making sure that we do it in the most inclusive way possible. Issue number three is if there's problems in the industry with that, we need to address that separately, right? Am I thinking about this right? Just the fact that Gen Z is interested in sustainability, and I'm oversimplifying just for time, then getting that message out that we're all about sustainability, in theory, should attract more Gen Zers in. If we then include an inclusive messaging component to that in methodology, that should address the second part of the issue as well, right? And then I know there's just socially in general, there's issues that have to be addressed, and we need to look at that in our industry.
I think you're right, Tracy, though I would switch your number 2 and 3, because my approach to diversity and inclusion is always, if you're going to invite someone to dinner, you have to set the table for them. So if we do attract people because they want to work in sustainability and they come work for us, and we message about how inclusive we are, and we go to dinner and then we're harassed all the time, you're walking out the door.
Sure, sure.
I have a great friend who used to work in a controls business, very talented, very smart trans girl, and she's no longer working in building automation. Doesn't want to work in the trades specifically, and is now working at a bank or something because couldn't do it
because
anymore.
of that problem. Yeah, I can
Yeah.
see that. I think it's a problem within the trades industries or contractor industries in
definitely.
general. It's not even just our industry. You know, it wouldn't
Yeah.
matter if you were building houses and doing framing or anything like that. That's a problem for sure. So for us to stand out with our industry or within competing vertical markets, let's say, where talent could go, then I agree that you have to first paint a picture of why you would want to come to dinner, but then somewhere there has to be a group within this industry that's making sure that it's set appropriately, right? And the tone is correct. So there are a couple of problems for us to address all at once to really pull this off. And again, I would assume, you guys correct me if I'm wrong, Monika and Audrey, but this is true if we were just saying women, right? It's not just
Yeah.
LGBTQ community,
Yeah.
right? It's women. It probably exists once you know, any kind of racism for that matter,
Mhm.
to be honest.
Yeah.
So
I
interesting.
think it also, Tracy, it's interesting. It's probably, especially the on-site thing, it's not particularly an age thing, because most of the older guys are not climbing up and down ladders, right, or on sites anymore. So it's a little bit like you said, it's the trade, maybe the you know, the people are being attracted to it. But to change it slightly, I think that it's interesting that at least now there's a reason to actually come into the industry. If you remember what Melissa said, and she said, okay, hands up all those that actually fell into the, you know, what we're doing today, you know, how did you get into the business? Most of us just kind of fell in. Now at least there's a reason for people to come into the industry, which we didn't have. You know, a lot of us did it for many, many reasons. I came from telecoms and it was just an opening. I don't know, but it's different. You know, at least maybe that's something, we got something to work with.
Yeah, and that was kind of my point, Roger, right? If the generation is more attracted to that messaging, then we need to make sure they understand that that's what this industry is all about. Then just naturally, due to the demographics of it all, we should be getting more younger people, more diversity into the industry. And then we need to improve our rejection rate, for lack of a better term, right? Somebody comes in and rejects us because it's inappropriate for of a work environment or whatever.
Yeah.
So that's why I kind of see this as attacking a couple of different issues simultaneously here.
I think that second problem that you're talking about, Tracy, though, is endemic in our industry. And I think there are, if it's something that does attract you, and I agree with your Roger 100% the earlier point about the sustainability and saving, you know, what you're trying to do locally is a huge, powerful statement that we're not really leveraging. But then once you make that choice and that's where you want to go, I think there are companies who are trying to be, you know, inclusive and provide the environments. And so, you know, if I was in that space, I'd seek out those companies first, obviously, to go find out who's actually have an inclusive environment to begin with, and who.
I'm being honest. I know it's coming from the softer side, from the consultants and the architects and the staff, as opposed to the on-site trades, which is key
True.
to some of the issues we have.
Yeah.
That's a good point. Another anecdote is my first internship when I was in college was at an engineering firm. I was working in the electrical and instrumentation department, and I was harassed a lot. And I went to the HR and the CEO, very small company, and they kind of told me, "Oh, he doesn't mean it." Okay. And after that, I decided I am only going to work at giant corporations where I know there's a really robust HR, you know, system, and if I had a complaint, so the company wouldn't be okay with that. So I mean, if we're talking about the trades and actually all the contractors that make this entire industry work, it's definitely an issue.
That's
It's a shame because the smaller companies can make a difference.
Yeah,
I know. That's what I was just gonna say. That's really eye-opening for me and very disappointing to hear. Completely believe it's true, but I was sitting here thinking just the opposite. Oh, well, small companies are probably the place to be, but I hadn't thought about it that way. It's, you know, we're a small company and we would never think that way, but it's, yeah, that's interesting. Eye-opening.
Well, I think also, Tracy, it's kind of endemic the fact that smaller companies can't afford or don't actually even get an HR type setup in their company till it gets to the point where suddenly they're getting large staff turnover and they're thinking, what's going on? And then you actually found out it's the guy who's actually running the company and the senior management of the issues. And they actually need someone at a board level that's HR to say the problem's you know, and that doesn't happen until the company's grown up a bit.
Well, I think the compound one is that Audrey pointed out is our challenge is, you know, when you do go construction on a site, there's a multi trades. You're dealing with a lot of trades that you have to interact with. So it might not even be coming from your company. It might not even be coming from your environment. It's coming from others, unassociated people who happen to be on site, right? That you've got no control over it. How do you manage
Yeah,
that?
the framers that I was talking about before, right?
Not to pick on anyone, but yeah.
Yeah,
The-
and that I was thinking when I was listening to Audrey is that this has to be a sort of industry wide, and nobody controls the industry other than the industry, other than people in the industry. So that's kind of an interesting way to think about it.
Shifting gears a little bit, in the chat, Scott put a great comment and he said, I propose that we could also attract non-STEM folks to our mission, and that will inspire them to contribute in a multitude of ways. We need more than engineers. Some of these newcomers may be attracted to become STEM-ish because of this mission. I think that's a great point. And I'll take another anecdote from ABB. We have a utility sales organization, so salespeople that go to all of the different electric utilities. And the job rec used to say that to be one of these salespeople, you had to have like 10 years of electrical design on power systems, which if you're going to be a salesperson, why would you have that skill set? So they completely nixed that and they made it much more broad. And they, well, I say recently, I think it's been a couple of years now, they hired this woman who her background, most recent professional background was in sales, but for cannabis in Colorado, which is previously we'd never hire someone like that at ABB, but she's like leading sales for the West region now because she has those skill sets. So I think, yeah, broadening our minds of what types of skills do we actually need? What types of training do they need? What can we provide? That also helps with the diversity piece. You know, if you're just pulling from engineering schools, and we know only 27% of engineering schools are women, it's a talent pool question. Of course, it's not going to be great diversity-wise.
So Audrey, when you were going through your educational process to get your engineering degree and et cetera, out of your time in your class, how many women were in the class, in your class of whenever you graduated? Or in engineering? We're in engineering.
I couldn't remember how many people were in our graduating class, but I wrote a whole blog post about it if you want to read it. But something I used to do every single semester when I go into a new class, count the women in the room. You know,
Right,
it's a
right.
electronics class, 80 people in there, 5 women, you know,
Right.
something like that.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, when I was there, there's one woman in our discipline, in our kind of our core discipline, you know, that moved through the curriculum together.
That goes back even further before you're harassed on the site. You know, there's not even enough people going in diversity into the industry right from the outset.
Can I ask a personal? You can answer or not answer. Do you believe that there's the same level of discriminatory attitudes in Gen Z as compared to millennials or boomers, or is this, hey, once us old white guys are all gone, it's going to get better kind of thing? Monika, you can answer too.
Yes, Monika, if you want to go, I would say marginally better, probably, but it's not going to be perfect. I feel like we're seeing a lot of, I mean, just go to your news feed. There's a ton of
yeah. Go on Twitter, right?
Yeah, go on Twitter. So many kids online being racist, doing horrible things, still drawing swastikas in schools. They've learned it now at this point. It's not going away. So I don't know, Monika, if you want to.
No, I totally agree.
Yeah.
I think once the older generation has moved on, we're just gonna be stuck with a new problem. I think it's gonna take. I don't think the issue's ever gonna really truly go away. It is part of our past, and I think it'll always be a conversation to some people, and we'll just have to figure out a way to move past that. But no, I don't think it's just the older generation that could be the issue. No, it's just something new is gonna pop up.
Yeah, it's not. And I'll claim Gen Z because I'm technically on the last year that you can claim Gen Z. But yeah, in my high school physics class, physics and calculus. I was the one girl in a room of 20 boys, and they would tease me all the time and say horrible things to me. So these young men are part of Gen Z technically, right?
Mhm.
It's not.
And Audrey,
So-
that's interesting because my son is a junior in high school
Mhm.
and he's part of the IB program. Now, granted, it's not STEM, but in that IB program, he is the extreme minority. It's all girls. And he's, you know, one of like a handful of boys in the program.
So as we start to wrap up, nearly getting to the top of the hour, just wondering, this is really great conversation. I think we're all learning a lot. But trying to think about the action, what can we do to make the changes that we need?
I think as a start, we've been doing this for 2 years. This is the first time we've heard from someone like Audrey. So, you know, we should be more inclusive to begin with. If we want to change something, we ourselves should adopt, right?
Right, eat the dog food. The very fact that we all learned so much today.
That's exactly right. Me
telling.
too. Yeah.
Very
I should
telling.
not be the first.
Oh my
That's a
goodness.
problem.
This is not good.
But I think, yeah, I mean, that's a lesson we should learn from this panel ourselves. I mean, it's taken us 2 years to get to this point. That's embarrassing. I'm sorry.
Okay, so how do we maximize that, or where do we go with that?
Yeah, I think from my perspective, I've learned a lot definitely from Audrey and Monika today. I think we need to think as a panel, how can we get more inclusive in our sessions as well, and how do we help promote a lot of the messages that they're putting out, right? So that's something concrete we can do. And I'm not saying Audrey and Monika every time. I mean, I'd like to have, you know, some of this as well.
Well, you could start with exactly Anto, you know, DM me on LinkedIn and say, hey, you should come next week and talk. Everyone here, pick someone that is not usually in this room, a woman, a person of color, whomever, and ask them to come and insist they come, you know, not just sending a link, but saying, hey, we'd really love to hear from you and what you have to say.
And I think that's really simple
one.
and proactive. And I can look at my company and I could think of like 5-10 people immediately, you know.
That's what I was gonna say. I don't have anyone that's sort of on the field side. We're a small company. That's why I'm so disappointed in what you said, Audrey. I don't have anyone that would qualify that are in the field, but virtually the majority of the rest of the company would qualify, right? Either woman or for whatever the reason might be. So even if I brought somebody, it would be quote unquote in the industry, but just not in the field and subject to some of the same sort of environments.
That probably doesn't matter as much, right? I mean, the perspectives will have a lot in common. So that's really what we want, and just sort of those points of views from different angles.
And there's a wide spectrum we can pull from, right? It doesn't have to be in one particular part of that spectrum. It can be wide.
And Audrey and Monika, you obviously hang out with lots of people of your age and most likely diverse in their characters. What can we do to help you sort of extend this sort of welcoming arms to people that you may know? That
So working at the library, I do tend to talk about the nonprofit and C4SB and Monday Live and the industry itself to quite a few people. I think number one, like with what Audrey said, pick a person, pick a couple of people and reach out to them. I think there is a giant barrier that us younger generation don't really know that you guys want to take it down. You know what I mean? I think that has to be step number one. But not only saying, oh yeah, come and join, but to actually listen. Sorry, fire truck. But to actually listen to what they have to say. And I, like what Tracy was saying, I don't think it has to be a specific person within this exact industry. I think a conversation with a bunch, obviously you gotta be somewhat part of the industry, you know what I mean? But I think a conversation with a lot of different people would do us really well, but breaking down that barrier and letting the younger people know that you guys are wanting to work with them is step number one. And I think you guys would be very surprised to learn how many people actually would love to be part of this. They just don't know that you guys are willing to accept them.
Kind of like me with the women's meetings, right? You
Yeah.
probably weren't on yet, but Audrey knows.
Mhm.
I just thought I wasn't invited, right?
Okay, no, I would assume you probably were, right?
Yeah,
That's what
but
Audrey
Tracy,
says.
Tracy, most people don't invite you, man.
I
So,
know, that wouldn't be a new thing for me,
Yeah.
but yeah.
Okay, well, we need to bring this to a wrap. It's been an hour. It's been wonderful conversation. Thank you very much, Audrey, for joining us, and Monica. Please do join us on any Monday at 3 p.m. Eastern, and we can continue this conversation. And this
Can
is
I ask a quick question real fast? Is there
Go
a way
ahead.
to save this chat after we hang up? Or is it just gonna automatically?
Yeah, if you see the three dots in
yeah, you
your
can
little
save
chat
it.
box. Just save
Oh.
chat.
Should have tried that first. Thank you.
I have a challenge for not just Audrey and Monica, but I'd start there, but this should maybe apply to all of us, which is whatever somebody said earlier, let's all challenge ourselves to bring somebody to the
Right.
future meetings, and hopefully it starts with you two. And we can try to do the same and then pass that challenge on to the people we invite, right? Because this all started as a conversation about getting younger people, remember? So even if we bring somebody who's 30 something or less, that's a great start too, right? So that until we start doing that, we were always kind of looking for these industry experts to come on that have 30 years of experience. Well, guess what? That's just us, right?
Right.
We got to break that habit.
Right.
So
Cool.
I will take that challenge.
I'm up.
You guys are challenged to all the Monday
Ron.
Live group.
Audrey, Monica, that goes for you too.
Okay.
Bring a friend next week.
I think
Yeah.
they've already
Bring your
put the
friends, I
effort
love
in.
it.
I think our challenge is to step up first, Tracy.
Yep.
That's the challenge for Mark, is struggling to find normal.
I just have a feeling they're going to be more successful than us for doing.
That just means you're not trying.
We'll see.
Yeah,
I'm
exactly.
the boss, so maybe I can
Exactly.
force the issue a little bit, right? So
No,
As I was
that
saying
just means
before,
you're not
it's not
trying.
up to the women to liberate ourselves.
Thank you.
It's up to you.
Yeah.
You can't throw it back.
Yep.
Okay, let's bring this to a wrap. Again, thank you,
Great
Monica
session.
and Audrey.
Thanks,
and,
everybody.
Yeah,
we'll
thanks,
put a
John.
video out, and see you next week.
Okay,
Bye-bye.
Thanks.
thanks.
Yeah.
guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.